Um, I will try to explain to you, which is a part of me, some of the things that I broadly know about the current war in Ukraine, caused by Russia. And I will just take the daily newspaper and explain some of the things that I understand. I translate in English if I can. The Ukrainian defense organizes itself in chaos. From the point of view of God, there is chaos within God, and the purpose of God is to organize this chaos by logically connecting everything together. That's the process of coming into being of God. Europe and the United States are looking for a mean to bring Vladimir Putin back to reason. I'm not sure that it's perfectly translatable in English, but to bring him back to his mind, one could say. But bring someone to reason, because there is only one, is to bring God in cognitive relationship with himself. So what this newspaper says, without having any consciousness of it, is actually God speaking through the newspaper to himself. And God says to himself that Putin has to understand himself as a manifestation of spirit. That's what I tried to express in the video that I made yesterday about the phenomenology of spirit. I continue. The purpose is a demilitarization and denazification of Ukraine. God is a Nazi, partly. You can realize this by following some of my videos on Alt-Censored, under the title Cultural Hegelianism, that National Socialism is a part of the development of God's mind. So, yeah. There are aerial strikes and terrestrial invasion, because God is the master and ruler of the sky and the earth. That sounds crazy, but then they talk about the European leaders, world leaders, and the leaders of the free world. Strictly speaking, there is no freedom in the world. That's a Spinozian idea and a Hegelian idea. The people who believe to be free are deluded about themselves. There is only one free being, and it is the Absolute. And why is he free? Because he is absolutely determined only by himself, and to be determined by oneself is the definition of freedom. So only the Absolute is free. Every other thing or mind who thinks himself to be free is delusional. So to talk about the free world, only the totality of the world coming into cognition of itself can be free, and that's why we're in a process of liberation of the Absolute. The most serious attack against peace and stability in our Europe for decades. God is fundamentally unstable because he's a dialectical process, and what I have come to understand in my intellectual development is that the peace which had existed in Europe for the past 70 years was kind of a delusion, because this peaceful state of things lead to the erasure and the extinction of Europeans. So that's a contradictory peace in a way. The world will hold Russia accountable. Russia will be held accountable for the crimes perpetrated. But strictly speaking, the Russians and Putin are not free, and those who oppose Putin are not free either. The only being which is free, like I said, is God himself. So the only being which must be held accountable for this war is God himself, and God has to justify his own creation. And like I said before, I will, as my transcendental self will have to justify these events, and that's very difficult, but that's why I'm starting to trying to do conceptually. Then the NATO, the general secretary or the general administrator of NATO said that there was no plan. But strictly speaking, there is only one plan, and this is God's plan, divine providence, and that's it. So those who believe that there is no plan, or that some people have a plan, that there is a conspiracy or whatever, there is only one conspirator, because there is only one spirit, and it is God conspiring against himself. That's the whole truth of whatever exists. Manifestations against war, these are bits of God's mind manifesting and demonstrating against war, but they are determined as those manifesting or demonstrating against as those in favor. They are both in the mind of God. And yeah, there will be misinformation, manipulation, sabotage. Strictly speaking, it is God deluding himself. We can find this idea in Philip K. Dick's exegesis, that God is lying to himself and he's deluding himself, and we find this in Hindu mysticism, that the Brahman, the Maya, the Atman, that's a delusion. We woke up today in a new Europe, in a new world. Well, I published a video on the channel Eternal Light when I said that a couple of days ago I decided, actually it was not me, it was my transcendental self becoming conscious of itself, to enter willingly his own creation. So God entered his own game, which is a very twisted game, and that's why the world has changed, because I am in the world and I am conscious that the world is my manifestation as a transcendental self. So that's it. Vladimir Putin is responsible for reintroducing war in Europe. God is responsible for that. And since I am in a process of trying to become God, namely to abolish the distinction between mind and world, I am responsible for that. The first victim of a war is truth. Yes. The only reason that he knows, Vladimir Putin, is that of the strongest. And the strongest is God. He's stronger than man, stronger than the devil, stronger than the world. He's the strongest. So that's true. And there is a historical responsibility to retort or replicate, to respond to his bellicose attitude, his warmongering, in the most determined and determinate manner, which is the response against this war is produced by God, and he's determined to be the way it is by God, because, like I said, everything is determined except the mind of God becoming fully conscious of himself in the world as an image of himself and becoming one with this world, and this is spirit, as Hegel calls it. So yeah, and I just try to make sense, and yeah.